All right, so you want to dive into these shoulder exercises.
Let's do it.
Awesome. You sent over a whole bunch of articles. It seems like you're really trying to pack on some muscle and strength up top.
Yeah, looking good.
Yeah, man. So what's interesting is that like all of your sources seem to agree on the top 10 exercises for shoulder development.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap between them.
Yeah, it's like we got like a cheat sheet for success here.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the fitness world has really honed in on these like core exercises that are just like essential.
Absolutely. So let's reveal those top 10 right. We've got the push press, the military press, rear delt row, seated dumbbell press, seated barbell press, upright row, Arnold press, rear delt fly lateral raise, and the front raise.
That's quite a list.
That's like it's like the Avengers of shoulder exercises. Yeah.
It is. Each one has its own superpower.
Yeah, totally. So, let's break down a couple of these exercises a little bit more.
Okay, that's good.
So first up, we got the Arnold press, a variation of the dumbbell press, but with little twist. Literally.
Yeah, you rotate those dumbbells as you're pressing up.
Exactly. And that really targets those front delts, to give you that really nice rounded shoulder look.
Mm-hmm. It's a good one.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the rear delt fly. This one is all about those often neglected rear delts, which are crucial for posture and overall shoulder health.
Oh, absolutely. And they can really help to prevent muscle imbalances that can lead to injuries.
Right. So you're not just building like show-off muscles. You're actually building like a strong and resilient foundation.
Exactly. Like you want your shoulders to function well and look good.
Of course. That brings us to an important concept that your articles highlight, and that's the idea of compound versus isolation exercises.
And how important it is to include both.
Yeah, totally. So compound exercises, like the push press, engage multiple muscle groups at the same time.
It's like a full body movement.
Yeah, you start by dipping down, engaging your legs and your core, and then you explode upwards, driving that weight overhead with your shoulders and triceps. Yeah, you're not just, working shoulder strength, you're building like overall athleticism.
Definitely. And your sources point out that the push press is really popular amongst bodybuilders, especially during the off season, because it helps them build that like raw power.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like training your muscles to be more powerful in everything you do.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's awesome. Now, on the other hand, we have isolation exercises like the lateral raise, which, as the name suggests, really zero in on specific muscles like those side delts.
Yeah, to give you that nice wide-capped look.
Absolutely. It's like using a sculptor's chisel to fine-tune those details.
Yeah, a perfect analogy.
Now, one exercise that kind of surprised me in the research was the inclined dumbbell row.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because I normally think of this as like a back exercise, right?
Mm-hmm.
But your sources highlighted its incredible ability to activate the middle delts.
Yeah, you're right. It does get labeled as a back exercise.
Yeah.
But when you think about the angle of pull, it makes sense that it would target the middle delts.
Yeah, totally. It's a great reminder that sometimes the most effective exercises aren't the ones we expect.
You got it.
Now, speaking of unexpected benefits, your sources repeatedly emphasize the importance of rear delt training.
Yeah, they do.
And they even have one expert, John Russin, recommending rowing 2 to 3 times as much as you press for optimal shoulder health.
Right, because those rear delts are super important for maintaining shoulder stability and preventing imbalances, but people often neglect them.
Yeah, totally. It's not just about building those mirror muscles. It's about building a strong and balanced foundation for long-term shoulder health.
Yeah, you want your shoulders to be functional and pain-free for years to come.
Absolutely.
It's a holistic approach to shoulder training.
I like that. And speaking of holistic, let's talk about another crucial aspect: training frequency and volume. How often should we be hitting those shoulders, and with how much intensity?
Well, according to your sources, it seems like 2 to 3 times a week is a good sweet spot.
Okay, so 2 to 3 shoulder workouts a week, hitting each muscle group with enough sets and reps to really challenge them.
Yeah, you want to find that sweet spot where you're pushing your muscles without overdoing it.
Totally, because, pushing too hard can actually backfire and hinder your progress.
Yeah, exactly. Consistency and balance are key.
Right. So speaking of balance, let's transition to something that I noticed your sources consistently emphasize, and that's proper form.
Oh, absolutely. They really stress the importance of proper form to prevent injuries and maximize those gains.
Totally. And they highlight a specific example, the upright row.
Yeah, they recommend using a wider grip to avoid shoulder impingement, which can be really painful and limit your progress.
Yeah, so using the right technique protects those precious shoulders. It's not just about lifting the weight, it's about lifting it correctly.
You got it. And that leads us to another important point. They really hammer home that using proper form isn't only about avoiding injury.
Yeah.
It's also about really maximizing that muscle activation, making sure that you're hitting those muscles.
Right, like being a precise surgeon.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about those exercises that specifically target shoulder health. Because your sources, they dedicate a whole section to this.
They do. And it's really interesting because they emphasize that strengthening those like smaller stabilizing muscles
Yeah.
can actually help improve your performance in other lifts.
Makes sense. So it's almost like reinforcing the foundation of a house, right?
Exactly.
And then you can build, those impressive upper floors.
Yeah, like a solid base.
Yeah. And they mentioned, a variety of these exercises. Some of them sound kind of intimidating, like
Band dislocation.
band dislocations.
Yeah, but they're actually pretty simple.
Right.
And really effective for improving mobility and stability.
So it's not just about strength. It's about, like, making sure those shoulders are running smoothly.
Right, exactly. They also talk about dead hangs, internal and external rotations, and band pull-aparts, all designed to keep those shoulders healthy.
Okay, so we're talking about shoulder health, and that kind of brings us back to understanding shoulder anatomy, right?
Right.
Because your sources, they touch upon this a bit.
Yeah, they do. They break down the deltoid muscles.
Yeah.
You've got the anterior, the lateral, and the posterior deltoids.
Yeah.
Each one has a different role in how your shoulder moves, and understanding that can really help you choose the right exercises to target those specific areas.
Right. It's like having a roadmap of your shoulder muscles.
Totally.
So you can get to that, specific destination.
Exactly. You want to have a strategic approach.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we understand our shoulders a little bit better, let's talk about, putting all of this knowledge into action with a solid shoulder workout routine.
Right. Let's get practical.
Your sources actually offer some fantastic examples combining, compound and isolation exercises.
Yeah, and what's great is that they have routines for different goals. So whether you're trying to build strength or just add some size, they've got you covered.
Awesome. So whether you're like a seasoned gym rat or just starting out, you've got options.
Yeah, and a lot of them can even be done at home.
Oh, cool. So really no excuses.
Right, and what's consistent across all of those routines is the emphasis on those key principles that we've been talking about, like balancing those different types of movement,
right,
using proper form and incorporating exercises for shoulder health.
Okay, cool. So it's like they've given us the blueprint.
They have.
But with the flexibility to kind of customize it.
Exactly. Make it your own.
Perfect. Now, before we, move on to the next thing.
Okay.
Are there any other, like, key takeaways from the sources that you think would be valuable to highlight?
Let me think.
Because I know we've covered a lot, but...
Yeah. Well, one thing that they really emphasize is using a full range of motion.
Yeah.
Especially during exercises like shoulder presses.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're really, like, making sure those muscles are working through their full potential.
Right. Squeezing all the juice out of the exercise.
Okay.
And another important tip is to really control that eccentric phase of the movement.
So that's like the lowering part?
Yeah, like when you're lowering the weight during a lateral raise, for example.
God.
Instead of just letting gravity do the work, you want to actively resist it.
So it's almost like you're working the muscle even harder when you're, like, coming down.
Exactly. It creates more tension.
Gotcha. Okay.
They also say don't be afraid to use cables and machines.
Oh, yeah, because, free weights are fantastic.
They are.
But cables and machines can provide a different kind of challenge.
Absolutely. They offer that constant tension throughout the movement.
So those muscles are under pressure the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's a great point.
And they can be really good for beginners, too.
Okay.
Or people with shoulder issues because they offer more support.
So again, it's like not about choosing one or the other. It's about having that variety.
Right. Using all the tools in the toolbox.
Now, another thing they mentioned is focusing on those small improvements over time.
Yes. It's so easy to get caught up in chasing big numbers.
Yeah, you always want to lift more.
Right. But really, it's about consistency and gradual progress.
It's like those small wins that add up over time.
Exactly like climbing a mountain. You might not see the summit right away.
Right.
But if you keep taking those steps, you'll get there eventually.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we're almost at the end of our shoulder journey here.
Almost.
Anything else that we absolutely have to mention?
Warming up.
Oh, yes.
It's crucial.
Of course, always got to warm up properly before any workout, especially shoulders.
Right. Those warm-up exercises we talked about earlier are key for getting those shoulders ready.
It's like giving your shoulders a nice little wake-up call.
Exactly.
So remember, building those strong, healthy shoulders, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
It is.
It's about consistency, smart training choices, and prioritizing both performance and longevity.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You're well equipped to go crush those shoulder goals.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up this epic shoulder exploration, I've got one final thought that's been kind of brewing in my mind. We've covered a ton of ground on like the how of shoulder training.
Yeah, we have.
We've explored, the best exercises, the importance of proper form, and even, how to structure a routine.
All the practical stuff.
Right, exactly. But I think it's time to kind of zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
And consider the why.
The why.
Why are strong shoulders so crucial beyond just like, filling out a t-shirt?
Right. Good point.
It's more than just aesthetics.
It is.
Right.
Yeah, strong shoulders are like the foundation for a powerful and stable upper body.
Totally.
They're essential for so many movements.
It's true. Like, think about it. Everything from, effortlessly lifting heavy grocery bags to, throwing a baseball or, dominating a weekend basketball game.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
we spend so much time hunched over our computers and phones these days
Yeah.
that it can really lead to rounded shoulders and like a weakened back.
Yeah, totally.
So dedicated shoulder training can help counteract that.
So it's not just about vanity. It's about investing in our long-term health and well-being.
It is.
Yeah, for sure. And, here's another thought-provoking point that I pulled from your research.
All right.
We've talked a lot about building muscle and strength.
Yeah, we have.
But what about shoulder flexibility and mobility?
Oh, that's huge. That often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
But maintaining that flexibility in your shoulders is so important.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it's important for reaching overhead, rotating your arms comfortably.
Just moving freely.
Exactly. And it becomes even more important as we age.
So it's not just about, how much we can lift, but how freely and easily we can move.
Exactly. Remember those warm-up exercises we talked about?
Yes.
They're not just about preventing injury. They're
Yeah.
about increasing that range of motion.
Like giving our shoulders a little yoga session before the heavy lifting begins.
Exactly.
So building those strong, healthy shoulders, it's like a multifaceted endeavor.
It is.
It's about strength, but also mobility, flexibility, and, just overall joint health.
Couldn't agree more.
It's like a holistic approach. And that's what I think makes, this whole deep dive so valuable.
Totally.
We went beyond just like a list of exercises
Yeah.
to a deeper understanding of, how shoulders really impact like our overall fitness and well-being.
It's been a good deep dive.
Awesome. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this epic shoulder exploration.
Sounds good.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay, I'm ready.
We've discussed the importance of training, all three heads of the deltoid muscle.
Right, the front, the side, and the rear.
Right, exactly. But what about those other muscles that surround the shoulder joint, like the rotator cuff?
Yes, those are important.
How can you incorporate exercises that target those often neglected muscles into your routine?
That's a great question to consider.
Yeah, so keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing those shoulder limits.
Absolutely.
Until next time, happy lifting.